Oh my gosh, you made it. Dee Williams here. We are part 3 of the individual Audacity documentary. This is part 3 of 9. Are you ready to dive in? Let's do it. Seventh grade. I was in the 7th grade with a baby. I come in 2 months late from maternity leave. Everybody in the school already knew. And it was insane. It was insane because one, the kids teased me about being dark skinned all the time. So I was constantly fighting. But two, like, I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't go to the dance. I couldn't do anything. I wanted to go skating with my friends. My mom would make me take the baby with me, which my friends at school didn't mind, because he was a little kid, but it was hard. Sometimes I would sit in class, and because I was breastfeeding, yes, I breastfed at 12, my breast would leak. So I would be in biology, science class, and one of the kids would say, "Ew, what's that on your shirt? Oh my gosh, that's disgusting." And I would look down and my whole shirt would be wet, And I would have to go. I spent a lot of time at the janitor's office because they would have to wash my clothes and I would have to go in there and pump because I felt my baby was hungry. And I would call the babysitter and say, "Is he eating? Because my breasts are leaking. Is he eating?" She's like, "Oh, let me feed him now." So I was nervous and worried because I wasn't sure what was going on there. Wasn't unsure, it was just a very challenging time. So imagine this 12-year-old with huge breasts with milk in them, constantly leaking, and trying to create this friendship or trying to create friendships with people my age who were not parents.
You would see teenage mothers definitely, but at 11 and 12, it was something that was very uncommon to see someone that young pregnant. So the atmosphere was a pretty hostile and unfriendly atmosphere to someone that young having a baby. Sure, there were girls in the old neighborhood in the city that were pregnant at 14, 15, and 16, but she was one of the only ones that was pregnant so young, especially now we're not in Baltimore City, we're in Baltimore County, where it's a different demographic. We're working class. We are a higher echelon, a higher socioeconomic status than what we were in Baltimore City. So it was especially unaccepted in that type of community.
Also being tortured every day for being dark skinned. Every day. Darky, blackie. In school, fighting every day. We learned about Paul Revere and this black horse, and they said, "That's D." Everybody laughed, and the teacher didn't seem to care. So I hated school. I cut school all the time.
One of the big things that jumps out to me is the fact that Kitty didn't have much. So my family, my mom also is college educated, just like my grandmom. And at that time, I had a stepfather in the home, and this was a 4-bedroom house. And we were really a working middle-class family. So I wasn't privileged, but I had nice clothes and nice things. And Kitty did not. And I think that was another thing that a lot of the kids would distance themselves from, because she didn't have the latest fashions and she didn't have the nicest clothes. They couldn't really see beyond that. And so when we would actually, talk about cultural norms at the time or pop culture, it was something that was a touchy subject because I knew that she didn't have much. So even today, I'm not going to sit around and talk about all of the things that I have to a person who's still really struggling. And that's kind of the way that I was back then. So we didn't focus a lot on, what were the latest sneakers, what was the latest fashions, the latest hair, the latest makeup, the latest jewelry, because I knew that was something that she really didn't have, and it was a point that she was bullied on, or pseudo-bullied on, or picked on for not having things. So we really didn't, talk a lot about pop culture. We did like music. We really, really loved rap music. It was not what they said to her, it's what they didn't say. She was socially isolated. She didn't have friends. So it wasn't that everybody talked behind her back a whole lot. It was, I don't really know what's up with her. She's weird. Like, she's strange. What's her deal? And I think that her lack of also trying to force these relationships or readily engage turned people off, turned pre-teenage girls off, because pre-teenage girls, tend to click up and really engage with each other because they are in like this friendship circle. And so her personality was great, as far as I was concerned, and she was very, lively, and again, she was very colorful, but she wasn't really that well received. I think the first thing they saw was, one, her outfits, and two, her complexion. She has a beautiful dark complexion, and there's colorism in our community. And I do believe that a part of her social isolation came from just how she looked on the exterior. So they never really got a chance to get to know her, and she didn't force people to try to get to know her, because she had that maturity in her that lent to, but if you don't want to know me, I don't want to know you. And so that made her appear socially awkward to others, but she wasn't socially awkward at all.
Growing up as a preteen, as a teen mom, is definitely one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. Why? Because everyone had opinions. Everyone had opinions. But nobody had solutions. People either wanted to put me down, or they wanted to do it for me. But very few people wanted to take the time to just show me, to just help me. They made assumptions about me. They assumed that because I was a baby, that I wouldn't know how to take care of a baby, as if my maternal instincts wouldn't kick in, as if the core of who I am and what I had experienced would not have shaped me to be a decent parent. Instead, they pointed fingers, they judged me, and had already defined my outcome and my destiny. And I had to build a wall that pushed everyone out so that I could only hear my voices. Because everybody else's voice was not helping me. They were hindering me. I feel like a lot of young ladies who get caught in the welfare system or in the victim system is because everyone is pointing the finger, but they're not holding the hand. And when they are holding the hand,
and they see that the young woman is angry or has a chip on her shoulder, they take that as if she's not interested in being helped, not really understanding that that's how she's attempting to cope with the situation that's being put in front of her. And for me, after my stepdad touched me and watching my mom bring him back into the house, after going from babysitter to babysitter to babysitter to babysitter, being tortured, raped, abused, molested, beaten, I put up a wall. And when things happen over and over and over again, you have to find your vibration of protection. You have to find your vibration of certainty. You have to find your vibration of clarity.
To experience multiple traumas over the course of years, it is extremely difficult to kind of power through that.
Going into high school over the next year after that, it was a little challenging. And I came home for the summer. I went to visit my mom for the summer in South Carolina and met this guy who saw me and at a church function that they had outside and began to like sing to me, took the microphone, started singing to me and wooed me, took me places, did things with me, for me, when we were just together all the time. And this time it was a very mutual thing, you know, and I had grown up a lot at this point. By this time, I think I was 15. And you know, we had sex, I got pregnant. But the moment that he found out I was pregnant, because he was 22 and I was 16, of course my mom threatened him and he said it wasn't his baby.
She was pregnant with EJ, which is her second child, which is my godson. She was stressed throughout the pregnancy. She had a very high stress pregnancy.
So first of all, my son was premature. He was 1 pound, 13 ounces. And he didn't come home for 3 months. So while I was in the hospital, I was in the hospital for 3 months, let me just say that, before I had him, because I had preeclampsia, which is high blood pressure. Okay, so I had a quarter. There's two things. I had a quarter and a pack of paper. And I had put the quarter somewhere in the house, and I think somebody moved it. I don't know who moved it. I think I blame Tina, though.
She probably did.
It was like, you moved my quarter. And she was like, why are you fussing about a quarter? And I was like, because it was my quarter, and you moved my quarter. I was angry, and then something happened with this piece of paper. So what I did was, I said, oh, I'm having stomach pains. So I was like, oh, my stomach.
That was that experience.
My stomach, I'm having stomach pains. So Tina called 911. So the ambulance came, took me to the hospital. I'm sitting in the hospital room eating crackers, like 2-3 hours going by, the nurse coming. I'm like, okay,
What for attitude?
I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go back home. And she said, go back home? You ain't going home no time soon. I said, oh, yes, I am. She said, oh, no, honey, you've got preeclampsia. You have to stay here until the baby is born. I said, no, you don't understand. Tina made me mad about my quarter. Like, she took my quarter and moved my paper. So I just told y'all that my stomach was hurting to get back at Tina.
Oh my God, she had an attitude over that.
I was angry over this, right? And so it was all not real, but only to get there and to find out it was real. And I ended up spending the next 3 months in the hospital. And there was another young lady that shared the hospital room with me. And she had preeclampsia because she was pregnant with triplets. And so we would talk every day, and she told me that she was 16 or 17 and that I could get my own place, that I didn't have to worry about staying with other people. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is a great idea. Can you connect me with your landlord? And she said, yeah. And so she did. And after my son was born, and I started to prepare for my son to come home, I called the landlord and got my own apartment. So I was 16 years old with my own place on Myrtle Avenue in Baltimore, which is equivalent to, Murphy Homes, which was the hood. It was the hood of all hoods. It was the projects. It was the big projects.
And when I walked into the apartment, I'm looking like, no, you're not going to be here. I did not like what I saw, and I was like, no, this is not Kitty. This is not where you're going to live. And my experience, as far as, it was horrible. I'm going to just be straight. It was horrible. I did not like the way she was living. And I knew she was to do better. Be honest. I knew she was going to do better.
Me and my son stayed there, and I just have to say that was a very major turning point in my life as well, because I couldn't breastfeed him because he was 4 pounds when I brought him home. And the apartment that I had holes. The holes were like this big in the floor, like where the panels were. They were like this big all over the floor. I didn't have any furniture. I slept on a pallet. I didn't have any curtains. I didn't have a refrigerator. I didn't have a stove. I had a toaster oven, and I was on welfare. Growing up, as a 16-year-old mom living in my own place on Myrtle Avenue was really brutal. My house was horrible. We were definitely infested with lead paint poisoning. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. My landlord was definitely a scumlord. I guess that's what they called them back in the day. I mean, obviously he was renting apartments out to 16-year-old little girls, and I didn't have Section 8 housing. I was paying for the rent through my son's Social Security check. I also was on welfare. So I used a portion of my money to pay rent, and I knew nothing about paying bills or anything like that. Nobody ever sat down with me and said, this is how you budget, this is what credit is, or a checking or a savings, or how you pay rent or anything like that. I had to figure those things out on my own. And so when the young lady at the hospital told me that this guy could help me, this guy would rent me a place, I was like, okay, great. This is awesome. I can have my own. And I called him. I met him at the place and saw the place and thought, there are things I can do with this place with my children.
I remember a time that I went to a place where she lived on her own as a teenager in the middle of Baltimore City on Myrtle Avenue, approximately at age 16. And it was a 3rd floor walk up in a brownstone that had nothing in it except for herself and her child. And there were some milk crates and a place to sleep, a makeshift place to sleep. And I could not believe that my friend, who is my age, was on her own to the point where she was renting an apartment in the middle of a drug-infested neighborhood because she had nowhere else to go.
I met this guy, he was a drug dealer, and he saw me walking down the street with my 2 kids one day, and he's like, how old are you? Like, what are you doing here? So I kind of told him what was going on, and he said, you know, can I come to your house? And I said, yeah, you can come on in, and I did. I let him come in, and he saw how I was living, and he reached in his pocket, and he pulled out a knot of money, and he gave me $500. And I said, I'm not a prostitute. And he said, I want you to go and buy you and your kids things, just things. And you come back in 4 hours, and I'll be here waiting for you. I said, okay. So I went out. Man, $500 was a lot of money, right, for me. So I went and bought food and clothes and, you know, different things like that. And when I came back and sat on my front porch, he was coming around the corner in a pickup truck. And he had a box spring and a mattress. He had some crates, a black and white TV, and some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle blankets. And he came into my house and he put everything up and he started nailing the blankets on my walls. And I thought, I'm living right now, you know, furniture.
It was just my place, which was something that I had longed for, right? Ever since I had experienced, you know, being molested and just kind of seeing that my mom was unable mentally to protect me or physically to protect me. You know, being able to get into my own place gave me an opportunity to have what I desire, which was freedom and to be able to protect myself. And so even though I didn't have any of the necessities that were needed in order to survive, it was enough for me to feel like I can figure it out on my own. And I did, you know. The only thing is that I had guests that lived with me. I had rats that were like this big that were constantly there and infesting my house.
Yeah, I told you I didn't have a refrigerator and a stove, right? Well, this particular night I was high as in happy, just like, yes, you know, I'm doing good. And my son, my youngest son, we didn't have a refrigerator, so there are these glass even flow bottles. I would take the Similac, mix the milk up, and I would put it on the fire escape on the outside so his milk would stay cold so it wouldn't go bad because I didn't have a refrigerator. So the baby wakes up crying, and I go outside to go get his bottles, and the rats had broken every last bottle. And all the money that he had given me that day, I had spent. And the interesting thing is that the food that I brought, I had in the neighbor's refrigerator downstairs. When I went to knock on the door downstairs, they had taken all my food and moved out. So I had no food, I had no money, no refrigerator, no stove. And I called my cousins who lived around the corner, and I was crying on the phone. It's snow everywhere. And they walked 2 miles to the 7-Eleven on Lexington Street to go get some Similac and bring it so that my baby would stop crying.
And I was so embarrassed.
Right.
I was so embarrassed. And they was like, it's not a big deal, Kitty. It's not a big deal. You know, we don't mind. It's for the baby. We don't mind. But I was still really embarrassed because we're all the same age. I got a baby. They didn't have a baby. They had to walk to the store in the snow on behalf of me and my baby.
Well, they was the aunties.
They were, and they were so cool about it. But oh man, that was a very defining moment for me.
Yeah.
You know, that particular night. It was not my ideal place to live, but it was mine. And I spent about 8-9 months there before, maybe even a little bit longer before I had an opportunity to move into my next location, which was still mine. But this place I'll never forget because I was literally 15 years old, 16, turning 16. So it's the end of December going into January. And I had my own place. And none of my friends had their own place, even though they lived home with their moms and stuff like that. Like, this was mine. You know, I didn't have to answer to anyone. And, you know, if I got into trouble, it was on me. I didn't have to depend on anyone to protect me because I was protecting me. And I felt like I could do a damn good job of doing that. You're still here. I love it. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching. We are going to dive into the next part. And I just want to say, please comment below. Let's talk about it. Whatever thoughts and feelings you have, comment below. Also, I would really appreciate it if you would like this video and subscribe to my channel and continue to go on this journey with me. If you're ready to dive into the next part, let's dive in.